Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel where I love to bring you my best tips and tools to inspire you to create beautiful home decor on a budget. I am really excited about the DIY projects in today's video. I've been planning these for a while and I'm excited to bring you these 4 DIY projects using books and book pages. So with all that being said, let's get crafting.
For DIY number 1, I'm going to show you a really easy way to make paper flowers using book pages and some bamboo skewers. So I am taking some pages from a book here that I've been using for crafting. And for each flower, you're going to need 4 squares of a book page. Now I'm going to cut these at about 4.5 inches square. And I'm trying to get pages that have words over the entire square. So 4 of those you're going to cut. If you don't have a cutter like this, you could make yourself a template out of cardboard or something and trace that onto your book pages and cut them out. So 4 squares of book page for each flower. I am going to experiment with some other flowers doing 4 inches and then also 3.5 inches. But the smaller you get, the little trickier it is to do some of the folding and cutting. So we'll start with 4.5 inches. I feel like that gives you a really nice size flower and it's a little easier to work with in your hands as well. So once we have our 4 squares, we are next going to take 1 square at a time and we are going to fold it in half diagonally 3 times. You're going to make 3 triangles. Okay, so the first one, we're going to go corner to corner. Sorry, I'm a little out of frame there. And then you're going to fold it again in half into a smaller triangle. And then one more time in half to make an even smaller triangle. So you're going to do that to all 4 of your squares of paper. Next, you're going to take a pair of scissors and you are going to snip the corner at the bottom. Okay, so where that last little fold is, the 2 flaps are at the top and then on the right there is the little point. You're just going to snip the tiniest little bit off of there. And then holding where you snipped, you're going to kind of draw a rounded pencil line to make this look like a flower petal. This is a little too straight yet on the sides. I am going to trim that a little bit more, but you'll see that when you open it then it's going to make 8 sections. You can use that first one to trace if you'd like, or you can just free draw your curved line each time because we all know flower petals are not all exactly the same size. Here you can see after opening them up and not liking that sharp corner, I decided to just round them all a little bit more, give them a little bit less of that corner sticking out, and it made them a little bit smaller as well. So when you open each of your 4 pieces, you're going to see that you have 8 folded sections or 8 little petals. And again, you have 4 of these. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take the first one and with your scissors, you're going to cut out 1 petal or 1 section. So now I have 1 and I have 7. All right, the next piece, I'm going to cut out 2. So I have 2 petals and then 6 petals. Sometimes you'll have to fold it back to better see the line to cut on. The next one, you guessed it, we're going to cut out 3 petals. So we will then have a piece with 3 and a piece with 5. And then the last one, we're going to cut in half. And we only need to keep 1 set of 4 petals. The other one can be recycled or go in the trash. Now, this is where you put it together. You're going to want to do this carefully with hot glue if you're an adult. If you have kids, just use tacky glue. But starting with the 7 petals, you saw I put a line of hot glue and then I overlapped, I kind of connected where the space is where we cut them out. And you can see it's going to kind of make it into a bowl shape. It's going to kind of cone up a little bit. So that was our 6 petals. Next is our 5, and then we'll go 4 and 3, and then I'll show you what we'll do special with the 2 and the 1. I guess on this one I decided to kind of curl the 2 ends around the paintbrush early. On the next flowers I'm only going to do it on 2 and 1, but if you curl the ends there around a skinny paintbrush, that's going to help you be able to roll those into a cone, especially as you get here to the 2 petals and then the 1. So we're going to do the same thing for all 7 pieces, gluing the 2 cut edges together to make a cone. Now that we have all our pieces put together, we're going to put a little circle of hot glue in our 7 petals down towards the hole, and then we're going to layer the 6 petal piece, trying to line the holes up as best we can without, burning yourself with the hot glue. And then we're just going to keep layering them inside of each other, 5, 4, and 3. Again, we're going to save 2 and 1 for the end. We have one extra step to do with those. And these are really fun when you start seeing the flower shape come together just from these squares that you cut out of a book page. Now, before you're going to put the smallest 2 pieces in, you're going to want to make sure that that hole in the middle is big enough so that these 2 pieces are going to go through the hole a little bit. We want that center of our flower to be kind of down in the flower. So here I'm putting the 1 petal in the center of the 2, and then we're going to just check and see if that piece can go through that hole so that it sinks down a little bit. I guess another way you could do this is just clip a little bit off the tip there so that it is a little shorter. But I'm going to poke that down. I'm going to use whatever means I can, and I'm off frame there, to make that hole a little bit larger so that this piece can set down inside. And we'll put some glue in there as well. So once we have our flower all put together, I'm going to start on the outside layer, and I'm going to take my skewer and I'm just going to roll the petals around the skewer a little bit to kind of get that floppy look on the petals. And I'm going to go pretty much around all of the layers up to the one with 3 petals. I won't try to do the 2 and the 1. They're just too skinny of a cone. But doing this extra step really does make this look like a real flower. So pretty. And then we'll go ahead and put that skewer up through the center to be a stem if you'd like. And then I've made some more here, just trying to make sure there's a hole there for the skewer to go up. And then I'm going to cut some little leaves out of book pages as well and glue those to our skewer stems. So I'm just going to attach 1 or 2 leaves to each of my flowers with a little dot of hot glue. And here's a few of my flowers made with different sizes of squares. And I did put skewers on them, but you could leave these without and use them to decorate.
If you're stopping by my channel for the first time today, welcome. I'm so glad that you found me. I really hope you enjoy what you see today and you'll consider sticking around by hitting that subscribe button. You can also tap that bell and set your notifications to all so YouTube should let you know when I go live here on my channel or upload a new video. Now, I am aware that some of you maybe feel weird or strange about using books or pages from books in DIYs. I've wrestled with that myself. Ultimately, though, it's something that you own that you can do with what you'd like. You're not destroying it, you are repurposing. And I found a fact that each year, over 320 million books end up in landfills. So I feel like by taking old books or just books that aren't being used anymore and turning them into beautiful home decor, I'm doing my part to save these books from the landfills.
For DIY number 2, we're going to take this little lamp I found at a Dollar Tree out of state, and we are going to give it a makeover, a bookish makeover. So the first thing I'm doing with the base is I'm taking my black Waverly chalk paint, and I am going to paint the entire base black. This is just going to go better with what we're going to do on the lampshade. Now, you are going to need to spray seal this paint in because I'm painting on plastic. Otherwise, it will just scratch off. So you can paint your base black or the color of your choice or leave it white. My idea for this white lampshade is I am going to Mod Podge some pieces of book pages. So I found this actually was free at a library book sale. The book was kind of falling apart, so I'm going to pull some of these pages. They're quite yellowed, and I'm just getting a bunch of the pages, and then I'm just going to tear them into different size and shape pieces until I feel like I have enough to cover my lampshade. Once I have a good amount of pieces, I am taking this black Tim Holtz distressing and the little sponge, and I am just distressing around the edges of each of my pieces here. This is just going to give this a little bit more of a worn, textured look to our pieces. Then taking a little bit of Mod Podge on a paintbrush at a time, I'm just going to brush it on part of the lampshade and then stick down pieces that I've ripped and distressed with the ink to go onto the lampshade. I might do a little bit of Mod Podge around the edges just to make sure it's down, but we will do an entire coat of Mod Podge over the top in just a little bit. And I didn't realize until a little bit later that I'm actually putting down the back side. I'm not even putting down the part that I did the ink on. But here I think, there we go. I'm going to turn it around to give more of a distressed look to our piece. So you're just going to put these pieces together kind of like a puzzle and line them all up until you have your lampshade covered as much as you'd like. Once I had all my pieces on and I trimmed any excess that was hanging over the top or the bottom, I'm now taking Mod Podge on one of these sponges and I'm just kind of pouncing it over the entire lampshade. I don't want to brush because I don't want to move pieces around or smear the ink any more than I maybe already have. So I'm going to pounce all the way around the lampshade with my Mod Podge and then set it aside to dry. As a final touch, I did decide to hot glue a row of this black rickrack around the top of my lampshade just to kind of tie in the black ink on the paper edges and also the black that we painted the base. And here is our bookish makeover on this little lamp. I feel like you could do this with any kind of lamp that has a flat shade. And my daughter already wants this lamp.
If you love budget home decor DIY videos like this one, please consider giving this video a thumbs up, leaving a comment or two. That lets YouTube know people are enjoying my content, and then they'll show it to more and more viewers.
For DIY number 3, we're going to make a really simple book page wreath. I am using some cardboard and some book pages. The embroidery hoops here I am using just to draw circles to cut out the frame or the form for my wreath. So I have this one, it's probably about 12 inches. I'm just going to trace out the inside. Then I'm going to take a smaller embroidery wreath and center it as best I can. And then we're going to cut out this ring of cardboard. And then you're going to see I am going to make 2 of them just so I can glue them together and make it nice and sturdy. So taking a good sturdy pair of scissors, you're going to cut out the cardboard ring, then trace it on another piece of cardboard and cut that one out as well. So like I said, now we're going to take our one ring that we cut out and now we're going to trace it on another piece of cardboard so we can trace and cut out a second ring. And now lining them up as best I can, I'm just going to take some hot glue and I'm going to glue the 2 rings together. This is just going to make a more sturdy base for our book page wreath. Next, I am just measuring the width of these book pages, which was about 5 3/4 inches. So I am going to cut the length to 5 3/4 as well, so that I am working with squares of book pages. I will say that by the time I completed this wreath, I had probably used about 60 to 70 squares of the paper. So depending on how big your wreath form is, keep that in mind. So I'm just cutting all of these squares and then we'll move on to the next step. So let me first say that my technique with this kind of changed as I went along. What I'm doing is taking a Sharpie marker and putting it in the center of the square of the book page and then kind of scrunching the paper around the Sharpie, putting some hot glue on the end there, and then gluing it down to the ring. Now later on, and I think this looks better, I am going to crumple up each individual square of paper before I then uncrumple it and then put it around the Sharpie. But this is really all it is. You're just going to keep making these little crumples of the paper, and I think you can see I'm doing first of all around the inside ring of the wreath form there, and you might need to hold them in place just for a few seconds until they are stuck down to that cardboard. So I'm going to zoom ahead here, and here is my wreath. I went around the inside circle and then the outside, and then once it's glued on there good, you can kind of scrunch the paper. Now the last thing I want to do is make a little bow. So I kind of looked at how long this should be. I'm using 2 pieces of book page that are cut at a rectangle, and then I'm going to scrunch them in the center and then kind of fluff out the 2 sides of my bow there. I'm going to take this long piece and fold it skinnier, and this we're going to wrap around the center of our bow. It's way too long, but that's okay. We can always trim it. We're going to put some glue down here on the front center of our bow and lay our little strip across. And then we're going to work at wrapping it around our bow and trimming as necessary. For the rest of our bow, I'm going to take one more long piece, a little bit wider. I'm going to dovetail the 2 ends here, just cutting that little notch in the ends. And then I'm going to fold it kind of in half, but at an angle. And then we're just going to glue this behind the first part of the bow that we made. So just putting some glue on it. We're going to lay that down and then add this to our wreath. To add our bow, I'm first going to take a length of burlap ribbon, kind of hanging the wreath from it. And then we're going to tie a knot up at the top so that we can hang this wreath. Then we're going to glue our bow to actually the ribbon, since the book wreath itself is so not flat. All right, so just tie that ribbon so you have a hanger, and then just hot glue that bow to the ribbon where you'd like it. And here's the finished wreath. I absolutely love how it turned out. It was definitely a labor of love. It took a little bit of time, but I'm so happy with it. If you are not already following me on Facebook, you can head over there after this video and follow me there at Monarch Mom DIY. I do post other videos and go live over there doing different DIYs than what I'm doing here on YouTube. And DIY number 4 is probably my absolute favorite. I saw a picture of a typewriter made out of a folded book, and I could not find instructions, so I just kind of went with it and did my best, and I love how it turned out. So I have this book from Dollar Tree. It's got about 460 pages, I think. It's got quite a lot. So I'm starting at the beginning, and you can see here, it's not a very complicated technique. I am folding the page, tucking it into the spine, and then pressing it down as I flip it to the left side. I am going to do a little more than half of the pages in the book, okay? I'm just going to keep doing that until I have a bunch of those pages folded over. Okay, so you can kind of see the book up there in the top left. I have a little more than half the pages folded. And now I'm taking this set of letter tiles from Hobby Lobby, and I've pulled out one of each letter. And then I'm just looking up on my phone the order that they go on a typewriter, and I'm going to lay those out, making sure I have them in the right order, and then we're going to add them to our book folded typewriter. I don't know what to call this thing, but it turns out really cool. Okay, so before we put the typewriter keys on, I am just trying to get this back side of the cover to stand up straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start hot gluing some of these folded pages together just so that they don't have as much room to fluff outwards, if that makes sense. And then I will be putting some glue along the spine at what would be the top and bottom of the book, but now is going to be the two sides of the typewriter. So depending on your book and how heavy it is, you'll just have to kind of play with it, but hot glue some of those pages together, just not all of them, and you'll see why in a little bit, until you can get that back cover to stand up as straight as possible. So once we've got that taken care of, now I'm going to start gluing my letter tiles down to the section of pages that I did not fold. And I think you guys can see how this is coming together. If you don't want to buy letter tiles, you could definitely just cut squares of paper or type them on your computer and print them out. But I loved the 3D look of this and just adding another color to this so far pretty neutral project. Okay, so I have all the keys. Now I am just gluing a few more pages to try to keep the back, or I guess it's the front cover of the book, but the top of our typewriter as straight up as possible. You can see I have one book page that I've kind of stuck in there, so it looks like whatever piece of paper I would be typing on. And then now we are just going to embellish with a little bit of faux florals and maybe a butterfly or two. And here it is, the finished typewriter from a book. I think it turned out so great. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of this and how you would display it. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Thanks again for joining me today. I really would love to hear in the comments which of these 4 projects was your favorite, and we'll see you next time. Take care.